All right, it was, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it was in the early 1940s. America was at war already. That the Prime Minister Churchill from England called the President Roosevelt and said, Mr. President, I have a problem. Can you help me out? And President Roosevelt said, well, what is it? And he said, well, England is full, absolutely full of German prisoners, POWs, prisoners of war. We are full. Can you take some? Can I ship some from England to America, big country over here? And he said, well, Prime Minister, what are we talking about? How many are you going to ship over? And the Prime Minister said, 50,000. 50,000? You're going to ship 50,000 POWs, German and Italian. You have to remember, they were part of the Axis, the Italians. 50,000? Well, the President said, can you do it? And the President said, yeah, okay, ship them over. So the first thing they did is, the Prime Minister called the Royal Navy, British Royal Navy, and said, look, they're going to be, the Royal Navy called the German Navy and said, look, there are going to be a lot of convoys, a lot of troop ships going to America. And all these ships are going to be full of German POWs. So if you sink them, if you torpedo them, you kill your own troops, basically. How many does a troop ship have? A troop ship typically can carry about 3,000 people, 4,000, maybe 4,000. So there were a lot of ships coming over here, 50,000. Of course, and the German Navy didn't sink a single one. That was the U-boat commanders were told, look, you're killing your own people. So not a single of those troop ships were actually sunk. Now, when they come over here, most of them came to New York, Hoboken, Jersey City, all along the coast, Staten Island. When they came here, what are you going to do now? 4,000 being unloaded. There's a ship behind it, another 4,000. Another ship, another 4,000. You have to get them out in the country. So they put them on troop ship, on trains. Some went to Georgia, some went to Texas, some went to the West Coast, to Oregon. So almost some stayed here in New Jersey, Fort Dix. Fort Dix was a big place. And the reason they shipped them out, they had to get rid of them. You know, so the trains were full of POWs going all over the country. Then the Germans realized, these POWs, they realized, they're all young men, 20, 21, 22, maybe some were 30, maybe there were some professional people who were career soldiers, who were maybe in their late 30s or early 40s, but most of them were young guys who got drafted. Teachers, young physicians, welders, people who drove the subway, people who were bakers, musicians, and so on. There was a whole spectrum of society that was drafted and caught and shipped over here. So they realized how big the country is. Sitting on the train for 4 days, going to New Mexico. So the idea of escaping is just about zero. How are we going to get from New Mexico back to the East Coast? How are we going to get on a ship? And the worst thing is, if we get on a ship and we go back to Germany, we get drafted again. So they said, for us, the war is over. We are the lucky ones. We are the lucky ones. We just sit and work and wait till it's over. So then another 8,000 came, and another 14,000 came. I mean, these are huge numbers now. Do you know how many total? It's hard to believe. The total number of German and Italian POWs in this country was close to 500,000. 500,000. They ought to be housed, they ought to be fed. The place to put them was in barracks, because the barracks were emptying out. The GIs were being shipped to Germany, to Europe to fight the war. They were being shipped to Japan to fight the war. So the barracks were emptying out. and the German POWs moved in. They got the same food as America, they had PX privileges, they had to work. The thing is, what are you going to do with a 22-year-old? You can't sit around all day long. So the ones who went to Louisiana, they cut sugarcane. The ones who were in Texas, they picked cotton. The ones in Georgia, they worked on the peanut plantations. The ones in Oregon, they were in logging, cutting trees, throwing them down the river, and so on. The ones in Maine, every state, they were doing, in the harvest season, potatoes. So everyone was basically used, had a job, and they got paid. Now the thing is, they couldn't pay them. Law is, you can't pay them in US dollars, you have to pay them in scrip. Scrip is paper money, military money, and they got paid 80 cents a day just for being a POW, and then $1 a day in scrip for working. And that money, they could use that to go to the PX and buy chocolate or chewing gum or whatever they wanted. Or they could save it up because they were told, once the war is over and you go back to Germany, we'll change it into real dollars. And the idea of having real American dollars and changing it to German marks was like 4 to 1, 5 to 1. Then the black market 10 to 1. So a lot of them saved their money up. So they all worked. On Sunday, most of them worked. On Sunday, officers didn't have to work. If they wanted to work, they could. On Sundays, they played music. The YMCAs throughout the country were very generous. The churches were very generous. They donated equipment, a piano, a couple of guitars, some violins, some trumpets. So Sunday afternoon, they had a music program. They played soccer. Of course, it was a big thing. So they had one camp playing against another. They had regular teams. And the question is, why were they treated so well? It sounds like they were treated well. The reason they were treated so well was because in 1929 there was an agreement reached, the prisoner of war treatment in Switzerland. It was the agreement of 1929 that how do you treat prisoners? And the thing is, the Germans, they had American prisoners. American prisoners, when you shoot down a big plane, most of them parachuted out, or they came in for emergency landing, and of course they were all captured. So the Germans had a large number of GIs. How many? 60, 70,000 GIs in German camps in Germany. And the Swiss being neutral, they could send the Swiss delegation, to any camp in America unannounced and check on the status of how the German POWs are treated, and they could send a delegation into Germany to see how the Americans were treated. Because not everyone was a pilot. There were also, in the Battle of the Bulge, all of a sudden 8,000 Americans gave up, and they were all herded together. How were they fed? And there was a big difference how the Americans were treated, American POWs were treated in Germany compared to Russian POWs. Russia did not sign the agreement, so Germany did. So basically, it's interesting how well those were respected. The German POWs were treated a little bit better here than the Americans because we had more food. There was more food, there was a shortage of food in Germany because all the food basically went to the German troops. And so there was very little left for the population. Then one day the State Department realized, what we have here, among all these 500,000 prisoners, we have 30 German generals. General, that's a pretty high-ranking thing. One was a 4-star general. Well, what are we going to do with the generals? What are we going to do with the admirals? And then the State Department said, that was very clever. The State Department said, okay, the war is going to be over, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. All these generals go back to Germany, and the admirals. The Russians probably captured 40 or 50 German generals. So when they come back, the question is, how do we, and there will be a new Germany formed when the war is over. No one knows which way that new Germany is going to go. Is it going to lean towards America? Is it going to lean towards Russia? Which way is it going to go? So the State Department said, what we can do is, what we should do is, we should really treat these generals really well, because they're going to have a big say in the formation of this new Germany. And when when the German generals from Russia come back, they're going to have a big say too. So if we treat them well, and we take them on buses, and we show them the Grand Canyon, and we show them the Navy bases, and the Navy yards, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, how we can turn out ships, when we impress them with the might of American industry, and we treat them well, and we take them to the Supreme Court, and we show them how the system works, and we tell them about, the new Germany should be formed on the American system, an executive branch, and a Supreme Court, and a legislative. We have Congress, over there they call it Bundestag, and that's exactly what happened. They had the generals, of course they were not the only ones, but they had a big say in forming of the new German government when it was over in 45, that basically Germany went to the west, and the German generals in Russia, they were treated well too, but not as well as the Americans. And that was a very clever thing for the State Department to say, look, these are really important people, we have to treat them well. And it made a big difference. It was one factor in the way the new Germany was being formed. The biggest fear here was, of course, are they going to escape? You have all these, and the thing is, you have big camps and you have satellite camps. One farmer said, look, I only need 30 for my potatoes. Okay, so that little small satellite camp up in Maine. And so they all worked, and then they said, well, to make sure they don't escape, we have to have one guard for every 10 soldiers, captured soldiers. They said, well, nobody's escaping, maybe make it 1 in 20. One soldier, American soldier, for 20 POWs. And they said, well, nobody's escaping, let's make it 1 in 50. So they cut the numbers down, and of course, that was a good thing, because the fewer people were guarding, the more people they could put in the army and ship to Europe to fight the war. And so some did escape. There was one case, three guys escaped in Kentucky. And there were quite a few escaped, but all of them they caught within 2 days. Couldn't get very far. What are you going to do? You escape in Albuquerque? Where are you going to go? Again, you can't use that script money to get on a train, and you don't speak the language. So in Kentucky, 3 escaped, and they got up in the mountains. There was a log cabin, and they were thirsty and hungry. They were gone for about a day, so they found this cabin, and there was a pump, water pump outside, and they were thirsty. So they went there, and they pumped the water, and they drank. Out comes from this log cabin, this old lady. And she said, "Get off my property!" Of course, they didn't understand what she was talking. "Get off my property!" And they just looked at her and, what is she saying? We don't know what she's saying. So she went inside, got a gun, bang! Killed one.
Oh, wow.
Killed one. The sheriff came, and the sheriff said, "Lady, do you know what you did? Do you know what you did? You just killed a German soldier, an unarmed German POW." And she almost broke down. "Oh my God, I can't believe I did this. Oh my God, I didn't want to kill anyone. Well, no, not really. I didn't want to kill a German soldier. You know, Sheriff, I thought they were damn Yankees." It's okay to kill damn Yankees, but a German soldier. There was one who escaped, and he went to, he just escaped, and they never found out. Before the FBI kept track of everyone. And it turned out later, he went to Milwaukee Well, a lot of Germans in Milwaukee, brewing city of the country. And he started a pork store. He changed his name. All of a sudden his name was Bruce Baker. Bruce Baker, with a German accent. Well, a lot of people here with German accent, so he blended right in. And he got married. He had children. He paid his taxes. He pretended he was born here, just of German background. He voted every 4 years. He was an American. And then in 1953, the FBI knocks on his door, and he said, "What is your name?" "Bruce Baker." "Well, your name is really Wolfgang Schmidt." We caught you. And the law is all POWs have to go back to the country. If they want to stay or not has nothing to do with it. They all have to be shipped back. And all POWs here, who were here, 500,000, were shipped back to Italy or to Germany within 2 years. So that by the time 47 came around, May 1947, everyone was shipped back. And so they said, "Well, Mr. Schmidt, Wolfgang Schmidt, you have to go back. You have to go back on the ship. We'll pay for it. You go back to Germany. But since you are married to American citizen and you have children and you have lived here now for 8-9 years, no police record, you can apply for immigration and he can come back within 6 months." So within 6 months, he was back with his family, running his pork store, or making sausages, whatever he was doing, maybe brewing some stuff in the backyard. There was one they never caught, and that was in 1963, the FBI said, "Okay, we're going to close the book. With just no reason looking for him anymore." It's 1963. It's 20 years after the war. Whatever he is, God bless him. Never close the book. And that's it. So that's basically, most people weren't aware of how many were here and how widespread they were. And there were no problems. Like I said, they played soccer. The Americans were also treated well. The Americans in the German POW camps, not as well as the ones here, but basically, and then the war was over, they came back. Like I said, a new government was formed in Germany, and it was based on the US. And it's worked so far since 1945. 49, Germany got its own government, the first chancellor being Adenauer, and now we have Merkel. Now in Germany they have Merkel, and it seems to work. So it was a good story. A lot of people don't know about the large number of people, POWs that were here, and what happened to them afterwards. And many of them, after being back in Germany, applied for immigration, came back and got jobs in the ones who were mechanics, in doing auto repair. Some went back to Texas. They got a big welcome. They applied for citizenship. Within 5 years, they became US citizens. There were thousands of them who came back. So it's a happy ending, a good story. My time's up. Any questions?
Yeah. What happened to Jewish American?
What happened?
POWs American.
What happened?
Did anything happen to the Jewish American?
The Jewish
POWs
Americans?
in Germany? The ones who were Jewish soldiers.
Jewish soldiers
Captured.
over there, they were captured. Your ID card doesn't say what your religion is. So they were just Sergeant Rosenberg or Sergeant so-and-so. They were just...
Well, you
Your
think
dog
about
tag
your name
does
tag.
tell
They
you.
what?
Your dog tag tells you what your religion
Yeah.
is, so if you're found, you're buried that way.
They were killed.
Oh, the dog tag, okay.
They were killed. There's a book, and I apologize, I don't remember the name of it. You get these Kindle books, I don't know if we were reading at the time. There's a book about the POWs, the Americans that were held.
Yeah.
And it was a story that was actually started by this guy's daughter came in and said, "What did Grandpa do?" And they found out what Grandpa did. Grandpa apparently saved thousands of Jews because of basically what happened was he ran the prisoner of war camp. He was a German, he was a lieutenant. they gave him the position of running it, and they were trying to sort out all the Jews and kill the Jews. And the officer of the, I guess, Stalin, who basically was in prison, he said, all your Jewish people step forward. Nobody stepped forward. And he was in charge. He
Right.
put the gun to his head and said, all you Jewish people stand forward. Nobody moved forward. So he actually got the whole group of prisoners in unison. I think got to back it up.
Right.
But they were starving.
Oh, yeah.
Any Jew that took down, you're right about the dog thing, they killed them.
Well, the thing is also
Terrible.
that you had the Swiss,
Terrible.
you had the Swiss coming in every month. The Swiss, it was any kind of, now the thing is, there were some atrocities. Whenever you have a big war like this, there was an American who went wild the guard and he shot 25 German POWs. These things happen. There were a German guard in Germany who shot 50 Americans. But these are atrocities. These are war crimes. These things do happen in war. But overall, it was a very peaceful, and most of them benefited. Like I said, so many came back. They liked it. All right.